Hey, it's Ro from Ro's Resource Room, chatting with CHAP. And today I have Abby Banks with me. I have never met Abby, so I am equally interested and thrilled to learn about her and to find out about her homeschool journey. So, Abby, welcome to Ro's Resource Room. How are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm doing well, and this will be a fun chat.
Of course. Tell me about yourself as a woman. Like, I know you're into the homeschooling thing, that's great, but tell me about you, and then you can share more about your homeschool journey.
Oh, that's so funny. No one asked about that, right? Our identities like wrapped up in I'm a homeschool mom.
Right.
I am, well, on this side, in addition to homeschooling, I guess I'm a musician too. Like I play piano and I actually teach about 20 students. I have 20 students that come to my house every week for piano lessons. That's a lot of fun. I'm so I'm
Sounds
a,
like
I'm a
it.
creative that way. Music has always been a big part of my life. So I enjoy that. And I guess along the creative side, I love also like making crafts and stuff. Like I've sold on Etsy for a decade. Now I have a
Well,
local spot in the local booth, like that kind of thing, because you need those like outlets where you get a break from the homeschooling. And as the kids get older, they don't need to be watched every second. You can say, okay, leave me alone. I'm going to go do something where I can kind of de-stress from the homeschool day or whatever. So I enjoy those kind of things. So that's a lot of fun.
that's awesome. Tell me the ages of your children and how you got started with homeschooling.
So we, in about a couple weeks, our oldest will be 21, and then
Okay.
20 is the next kid. Let's see, 18, and then 15, almost 16, and then our youngest is 10 and a half. So
Wow.
we have four boys, and then after raising them as like a group of kids, we adopted our daughter there at the end. So we have a 10-year span, but those first four boys were born within 5 years. So I felt like a crazy person. And I was just like, wow, this is nuts. But at the same time, it actually made homeschooling, I don't know, I don't want to say
Well, you
not
had your own
easy.
class.
Yes. Like you can do everything together. You're not worried about, oh, I have a high schooler and like they're not all spread out. Like they were always the same kind of grade level. So actually, I feel like it actually helped. But as far as homeschooling, well, I went to school to be a teacher. I was always that kid who like loved school. I was like, I'm definitely going to be a teacher. So I got my degree in social studies education, like 7th through 12th grade. So I ended up teaching middle school. Totally loved it. I really did love it. But we eventually moved on from that. I put my husband through grad school up while I was teaching.
Oh,
And then when
nice.
we moved, we actually moved up to Canada because I'm married to a Canadian. So we moved to
Hey.
Ontario, and that's where we had our four boys. So I was busy. I'm not working, like I'm just having babies here, and kept us busy for quite a long time. But I guess in my mind, I always assumed, because I went to Christian school. My husband did a little of everything. He did public, Christian, a little bit of homeschool. I
Mhm.
guess in my mind, I was like, well, I think we'll probably end up somewhere. He was going to be a pastor, so I was like, well, I think we might end up somewhere that there's a Christian school. And by the time my oldest was 5 and ready for kindergarten, no Christian school in sight. We wouldn't have had the money for tuition anyway. And it was like, oh, like maybe we'll homeschool. And I guess in our church at that point, there was a family with like teenagers and they were homeschooling and they were awesome. And we were like, wow,
Aw.
what a cool family. It's nice to have someone ahead of you in the journey to kind of
Yes.
encourage you and give you like that perspective of like, wow, my kids could end up that respectful and they could end up that, they were just a
Mm.
great family. And so we started homeschooling there with my oldest was 5 and, had the 4 boys there all together. But yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. And then we've added our daughter on at the end. Did I answer all your questions? So anyway, we were in Canada a long time. We ended up coming back to Pennsylvania. So I'm originally from Pennsylvania, the Chester County area
Yeah.
down near Philly. But I was telling you, now we live in the boonies. We live in the northeast corner where no one lives. It's Wayne County. It's like, very rural, but we love it here. So my husband's a pastor. And so now, like, I've actually graduated 3 of the kids. I only have 2 now at
Oh my
home. And I'm like,
gosh.
this is weird. I'm kind of I still have a 5th grader. So I've still got a while
Yeah.
till she's done. But I love helping homeschoolers with my blog, and I have a podcast, Homeschool with Moxie podcast, and I'm a Pennsylvania evaluator. So it's so fun to like help the families and say, you can do it, you
Mm.
guys can do a great job. So it's super fun. I love the whole homeschool world. It's great.
Love it, love it, love it. A couple questions for you because you mentioned music. Do you incorporate music in your homeschool?
Yes, and, like, when the kids are younger, it's easy to do a lot of music appreciation. There's so much that's so engaging for those younger
Hmm.
years. My kids have all taken music lessons eventually too, so that kind of becomes their music instruction.
Yeah.
Sometimes if it's a different instrument, they have their own teacher. My kids that take piano, of course, I teach them because I'm just here. Okay, I'll just teach you something else. But so yeah, they end up take doing their own music lessons. But I loved the younger years doing a lot of fun music appreciation things in general. Yeah, it's a lot of fun too.
Yeah, we definitely have a similar mindset. So my boys are 9, 7, and 11 months. So I have that gap too. But I was like, no, let's just get all the kids in. I'm doing the diaper stages and then I'm
Yeah.
done. So I hear what you're saying in terms
Yeah.
of you like literally build your own classroom, and
Yeah.
that's interesting. So let's talk a little bit more about outlets. You talked about how, sometimes you just say to the kids, okay, I need to do my crafts. Is this something that you're proactive about doing in terms of I need to schedule this in my day? Or is this more of a reactive, I'm losing my mind, everybody leave
Uh,
me alone?
No, I think it
Or
was
both?
built in. Yeah, no, they may be both sometimes, but I think it was kind of naturally built in, right? Because
Mm,
especially when they were younger, like you can be so effective with homeschooling. Even, so you're doing with those four boys, I did so many things together. So it wasn't taking all day. And then everyone needed help with their own math or their own, whatever they were learning, phonics at the time or whatever. But it was so easy to get done homeschooling just a couple hours in the morning, right? And then it was like, okay, baby goes down for a nap. And of course, those little boys just wanted to be digging in the yard outside. So it was like, they just spent the rest of the day outside. And it
mm,
naturally gave me that time, like, wow, this is great. Like it didn't have to take my whole day or consume all my energy. And I'm an introvert. So like too much
mm.
peopling is too hard for me. And I'm just like, okay, I've been talking too much today. I really needed a break because, so I think that was important too, just because of my personality. I had to have a little break from the kids. So, but
I
of
think
course,
what's
when they get
equally,
older, it's
sorry,
easier too, right? Because
yeah.
they can be independent. So I have a high schooler, but I mean, I'm not sitting there with him helping him with all his schools. So I still have that a lot of the day to myself.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think what's equally important is the fact that you know yourself so well and you communicate your needs. So instead of, trying to be an extrovert and then feeling burnt out or feeling drained, you're like, no, this is who I am, this is how I'm wired. I'm gonna build this in and I'm gonna tell you when I need one, even if it's not built in. So I think that's
Mhm.
beautiful. So thank you for sharing that because like you said, it's great to see other people who have done it or hear other people's journey. You're one of those people because you graduated children. Like,
Mhm.
that is amazing.
It feels so rewarding when you've done all that work, to actually be like, wow, I got them through this process, and when they're adults, you're like, I love them as adult children even better. It's so
Aw.
rewarding. Just it is. It's the best feeling ever. I love it.
It is rewarding because you didn't just create a mind, you created a character. So if you
Mhm.
like your adult children, then that's kudos to you because that's part of what you created and what you nurtured, right? So congrats to you.
Thank you. That's it makes you humble too, because it was everything, right?
Yeah.
It was their church life, and of course my husband and I as a team, and all the good influences they had too with other
Yeah.
adults in their lives is really important.
So I know you're not a fully an empty nester because you still have your fifth grader, but talk to me more about like what you wish you knew, starting with your oldest two, or maybe you can do whatever you want, but tell me what you wish you knew and what you started to incorporate as a result of those lessons learned.
Yes. This is a lesson that took a long time in a sense to finally be okay with. But
Mm,
one of my boys had dyslexia, but we didn't even get him tested, honestly, I'm going to tell you, until he was ready to go to college, well, ready to take his ACT to go to college because he needed accommodations because he needed extra time for the test because of the reading. But it's funny because it's like you start teaching your kids and you're like, okay, now I'm going to teach another kid. I'm going to do the exact same thing, use the same materials.
mm,
Now, why isn't this kid getting it? And in your brain they're all different, but I'm like, wait a second. Why isn't this easy? It was easy for the other brother to learn how
mm.
to read. Why is this kid struggling? And so I knew in my brain every kid is going to be different. Every kid's going to learn they're on their own way, but it really is something I wish I would have acknowledge. I guess I was in denial, right? You don't want to think, oh, my child
Mm,
is going to have a learning struggle and this is going to be a struggle the whole way through, right? But once that kind of goes along with mom gut, like in my gut, I kind of knew
hmm,
this kid, okay, this is not, I can't do the same thing I did with the sibling. So kind of go with your mom gut. I think as homeschool moms, we know, okay, this isn't working with this child or this child needs a different approach. And I think it's important to kind of go with that. But yeah, not every kid will learn the same. I wish I would have been okay with that. Maybe I felt like a failure, but it's
mm,
not. And that child is so brilliant in different ways than his brothers, like
yeah,
dyslexics and reading up on it. They're amazing and they see the whole picture. They're really good at this kid can build a computer from scratch. He's not good at memorizing. He can't do good on a fact-based memorization test and he's never going to be perfect with spelling, but he could build a computer from scratch. And I'm like, what?
oh, yeah,
That's not okay, I'm not good at that. But so it's really good to see the strengths in our kids, even if they have certain challenges. And dyslexia is just one example of that. They have amazing strengths. And I think early on, I would also say we were pretty relaxed because we had to be. You got four little boys, you're trying to do stuff together. You can't be super like strict or sit down and do a pile of worksheets or anything. But I think I still thought in my head because of my teacher years of like, more printables, the more worksheets we do, that means we're learning more. We filled out
yeah.
this whole pile of worksheets. And I wish I would have actually done like almost zero worksheets in the early
Oh,
years and more books. Like we didn't do a ton, but I kind of wish other than like, of course you need to write down math and stuff. I wish I had tossed away a lot of the workbooks just because, I think the hands-on and the reading, much more reading living books would have been a better fit for us. So if I could go back, that's something I would do differently. But, you can always go back and figure out, oh, I wish I hadn't done this. But of course, in all, I mean, you're never going to fail your kids. No kids are
yeah,
going to have gaps in their learning. They're all going to be fine, right? We are our own hardest critic as
yeah.
homeschool moms. But, so I would say those two big things. Not every kid's going to learn the same. Be okay with that. And personally, I wish I would have done less worksheets and printables in the early years, especially.
Okay, so I was already planning to come to chat, but just like talking to you right now, if I was not going to the conference, I would be signing up today. This conversation is so reassuring and so liberating. Like I said, I have three boys. The baby's not even,
Mhm,
counted as school age yet. But when you talked about like throwing away the worksheets and like shifting that traditional mindset of, you know, if it's not, I think the issue is if we can't measure it or if we can't
mhm,
quantify it, then we're not
mhm.
sure what's going on. So we're like, let's do the worksheet because if you get it wrong, then I know
Yeah,
you need
yeah,
to learn
yeah.
it more. But if you get it right, then I can move on. Whereas there are other things that you just can't quantify. And then you may not think that you're doing enough. So I really
Mhm,
want to stay on that and then talk to that part about reading because I've heard so many people in the homeschool community read aloud, and I
mhm.
read aloud, but I know I'm multitasking and trying to get other skills in because I'm like, sit over here, let me point to the word as I'm reading, and that's not what it's about. But like,
Uh-huh,
can you talk to me a little bit more about the value of reading aloud, the value of living books versus
uh-huh.
just instruction? And
Yeah.
then can we talk a little bit more about the learning struggle? And I'm telling you all this because I'm gonna forget. So,
Yeah. Well, and Pennsylvania homeschoolers, we have a harder time because we have that pesky portfolio at the end of the year. So everyone's like, "Oh, I need to do a gazillion worksheets so I can fill my portfolio with all those worksheets." But as an evaluator, I'm going to say there are families that hardly have any worksheets, but their kids are super engaged with the content. You can tell.
mm,
You can tell they did all this hands-on stuff. They read awesome books. They know their stuff more than the child who just felt like the mom felt like the child had to just fill out worksheets all year. Like not saying worksheets are awful and you
right.
never use them. Like I'm not trying to say that.
Yeah.
But um yeah, so as far as like well, even my dyslexic child. So I could have had him like, and I did sometimes at the beginning, like, you've got to fill out all these worksheets like your brother. He's not connecting. Like, it's leaving his brain in 1 second because he has that challenge with the writing and the reading and getting thoughts onto paper. That was like his struggle. The content wasn't his struggle. History, was
Mm,
super engaging to him. He could tell you. Actually, my dyslexic child had way better reading comprehension when he was listening to like the history read aloud. He could tell you everything and why this happened and who was
Mm.
it. Whereas the child who was actually loved the worksheets, he maybe couldn't get the cause and effect or the consequences or
Mhm.
why this happened. Like his reading comprehension wasn't as good. So that's kind of funny. Sometimes the
Mm.
worksheets, especially in the younger years, as kids are learning to write and getting, that can be like the barrier, but then it becomes a barrier with science or with history or whatever you're trying to teach via
Yeah.
worksheet, you know?
Hmm.
So if you can focus on the content, I think especially in the early years, just, a lot of auditory, I mean, that makes it easy to teach multiple ages together too.
Right.
Because you're
Yeah.
not all saying like, let's sit down with our history textbook and you do third grade and you do fourth grade and everyone's doing their own thing. It
Yeah.
allows you to do things together. But I mean, so the assessment, you were saying like, how do I know if you got it unless you're writing
Hmm.
it down? Um, this is where, like a classroom teacher has no clue how 25 kids are doing at any time unless they do a worksheet. You have to because you don't know.
Yeah.
But when you're homeschooling, you know if your kid gets it. And in through the years, I've gotten better with narration, but I
Hmm.
wish I had known what it was like way back at the beginning and really been able to start with it. But using narration, which is simply telling back, which
Yeah.
kids love to do anyway. And you can easily have a conversation and immediately, did he even understand what we just read? Or was he not paying attention or did he not get it? So I think using tools like that
Hmm.
is really great for homeschooling because it's natural, doesn't add to the paperwork. It's just authentic and it's just the way people have learned in all of human history. They didn't sit down and do worksheets. That's like a new thing.
Yeah. And to your earlier point about like the public school system, it's hard for them to do that. There's no way a teacher can physically sit
Mhm.
and have, a
Mhm.
child retell or narrate
Exactly.
back to them. So that's why they have to do it. So the flexibility and the beauty and the freedom of
Mhm.
home-centered education is just that you have your kid one-on-one. If you want to do a small group setting, you can do that.
Mhm.
But you also know your child. So you know when they're goofing off, you know when
Yes.
they genuinely, miss something or, they didn't comprehend. So I think
Mhm.
that's great.
Mhm.
Going back again to your son with a learning struggle. You said maybe there was a little bit of denial. You had to trust your mom gut, which I've never heard that term. I love that term. What, how did your response manifest? Because if you were in denial, was it
Mhm.
more of like a discipline issue where you thought that the child was goofing off or pretending not to understand? Like, what did that look like before
Mm.
you accepted what you were feeling intuitively?
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I did think you're just being lazy and you're not
Mm.
trying as hard. And then it was like, oh, well, I've got to throw more probably worksheets at you, more of this because you don't get phonics. So we're going to do more phonics worksheets. It probably was that. And
Mm.
that's not like, that was not a great thing. Yeah, that's probably what it was. And I can't even remember like how long did it take me to really clue in on it and be okay with it. But I guess once I relaxed a bit and realized he's going to learn differently and the whole way through like I could use certain curriculum with all my other kids but he needed a different approach for almost everything. I'm not going to say
Mm.
everything but almost everything. Even through high school it was like we had to come up with a different way because it was just more of a struggle. So I think once I was flexible and not pushing him so hard cuz he actually was trying hard and I think it frustrated him because he was like, "Oh,
I'm doing
I
my
am
best.
trying." But it is hard because 'cause you're with a little boy, you're like, "Are you really? Or are you just, being lazy?" Right? But, that's the first time I had encountered that. Obviously, like, learning how to walk, learning how to all these other things you teach your kids through the years. I never saw a problem with that child. He was always fine with everything else. So it was just when it came to the
Mm.
reading, aspect, that's when it manifested itself. So, yeah, once I relaxed and realized, okay, he needs different strategies, he did blossom actually when the psychologist did the evaluation for him so he could get accommodations on the ACT and then in college he has accommodations so he has extra time for testing. She did the exam for him. She was another homeschool mom actually in our states who did it. So she kind of gets homeschooling too. And she said, "You know what? I can tell he has dyslexia. He definitely does, but you've done such a good job at meeting him where he is that he
Mm.
has learned how to still learn with his struggles." I don't know if I'm saying it right, but like he's learned how to accommodate
Cope.
for
Yeah.
those struggles and still figure out how to move forward, which I felt so like because we had never tested him his whole school career. He didn't need to, right? We're homeschooling. We're going to naturally give him that IEP, that individualized education plan that he would have gotten in
Yeah.
school. So we never needed the test, but it was so nice to hear someone say, actually, homeschooling was perfect for this kid because you could
Wow.
naturally accommodate him. And he's doing awesome in college. He is studying criminal justice and he loves it. He's doing amazing. And I'm so proud of him because you wouldn't think a kid with dyslexia would do great in college. Well, he's doing fine, and he loves
Mhm.
it. So there
Yeah.
is hope if you're with your kids who have struggles, like you're the best teacher. They would not be better off down the road in the public school, which is sometimes what parents think. They're like, I can't do this, but you
Yeah.
actually are the best. Yeah.
So help me balance it out because on one hand, I'm hearing, maybe we should have probably not firm with the diagnosis, but maybe we should have given him a little bit more leeway had we known that it was an actual thing versus, a character issue.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, it sounds like a beauty in not knowing because you
Mm-hmm.
treated him and had different
Mm-hmm.
standards for him. Like, no, you're going to do this because your brother did
Mm-hmm.
it. So,
Yeah.
do you, what would you, if you had to repeat it, what
Mm-hmm.
would you have done differently and what would you have done the same?
I don't think I would have gotten him tested anyway, because I think that would have put a stigma on, like, oh, you've
The
got dyslexia.
label.
We never really talked, we never used the word dyslexia really, but it was like, but when I suspected it, I did start reading about it and educating myself. Now, if
Hmm.
I would have known to do that sooner, that would have been helpful. And some of my favorite, like the best resources, like I probably didn't even start reading till way later, like maybe he was in middle school or high school. And I probably should have read them sooner, educated myself sooner on them. But yeah, I still wouldn't have tested him because I don't think it would have really changed how I homeschooled.
I
Once I
love that.
realized he needs help, I just naturally, because that's what homeschool moms do. We naturally are
Right.
like, okay, let's do something different because we can. We can do that at any point in the year. We don't have to wait till the end. Like, so we have so much freedom and flexibility that, personally, I didn't necessarily need the diagnosis and I don't think it would have been good for him. So he got
Mm.
to grow up not having this crutch of like, oh yeah, I'm diagnosed with something. I don't know if that would have been good, you know?
Yeah, that's so interesting because I've heard many different schools of thoughts, and I really appreciate your perspective in terms of how the label could have potentially affected him. So
Mhm,
instead of him saying, "I'm going to rise to this occasion," and you saying just as a mom, because again, this has
mhm,
nothing to do with whatever label. We're all neurodivergent if you think about it, because we're wired differently,
mhm,
right? We all have different
mhm,
fingerprints, we think differently, we process differently. So whether you want to call it dyslexia, ADHD, autism, I don't know that there's a normal. We're all
mhm,
different, right?
mhm,
So for you to say, as his mom, I'm going to give my kid what they need, regardless of what you
mhm,
call it. I just think
mhm,
that's such a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing that.
mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't change a whole lot. So that's good. That's good.
That's
But he's
really, really
blossomed.
good.
But he's blossomed. So just I want all the moms out there who have a child who struggles, just don't ever feel that you can't homeschool them wonderfully. You
Right.
can. You are their best teacher. That's always the bottom line. You
Yeah.
are their best teacher.
Yeah. I love it. Tell me more about your topics for the conference. What are you going to be talking about at CHAP convention in June?
I'm so excited to be coming. This is like making me giddy thinking about it because I love talking to homeschool moms. It's so fun. Because I do this as an evaluator, like someone will come in and they'll be so overwhelmed and nervous and this and that. And then like if I can help take away some of that overwhelm and that burden, that's just the best thing ever. So they asked me to do 5 sessions. So I'm so excited to be doing them. And they're all kind of all over the place. But I believe on the pre-conference on Thursday, I'm doing Can I Really Homeschool High School? Because that's
Hmm.
always people are like, well, isn't it a ton harder than the elementary years? So I can't wait to do that one. Um, and then I have 4 others on Friday and Saturday. You just want me to mention the titles?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. So the first one kind of goes along with what I was saying. Now, this sounds okay. I purposely wrote it like this, but it's called I Don't Use Printables. Hint,
I
like
love
I
it.
use them sometimes, but I don't use printables. Here's why, and 10 strategies to try instead. But I actually wrote out 100 ideas instead. So
No
we'll give
way.
you a handout for 100 ideas. But anyway, we'll talk about 10. Yeah. So that'll be fun. Another one is 6 ways you're making homeschooling harder than it needs to be.
Oh
So
my
that's a good
gosh.
one too. How to homeschool multiple ages without losing your mind.
Love it.
Yeah. And then the last one is, how can I teach my child to study the Bible if I never learned how to do it myself? So that's the last one.
Wow. Okay. I love it. All right. So if you were supposed to give us a sneak peek of just one of them, what would you share? A tiny,
Oh
tiny
dear.
sneak peek.
Okay. Well, we kind of did talk about the printables one, which is kind of interesting. Well, can I really homeschool high school is good because sometimes, well, like I said, it's so rewarding once you get to the end and you have these adult children. I feel like moms put in this blood, sweat, and tears in kindergarten through eighth. And then for whatever reason, high school scares some people and they're like, okay, send you back to public school for that. I'm like, why would you do all that hard work in K through eight and then send them to school? You're missing out on, like, I think the best years. I know that sounds silly,
Mm.
but I love the high school years more than anything. It's not because I'm teaching them algebra 2. I'm not teaching them chemistry. Like, we're outsourcing or we're getting really good curriculum that they can do it on their own. I'm not teaching them all that stuff.
Yeah.
But like just the relationships and being able to challenge them, they have so much more flexibility with responsibility, work, if they want to work. I mean, like entrepreneurship, internship, like there's a million things you can do in high school. And then seeing them graduate and feeling like, wow, we did it. I say,
Right.
don't throw that away. Like you did all that hard work on the foundation years.
Yeah.
Go ahead and reap those benefits. But part of it is a mindset shift where you've got to like take your hands off the homeschooling and become the cheerleader, the mentor. I'm going
The
to
coach.
organize your courses, but you're the bulk of like you're learning very
Oh,
independently. And I think if moms realize you get to work yourself out of a job, by the time your child is ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th, you should not be like sitting there teaching them all day. Like you're basically working yourself out of a job. And if you can have that mindset shift, it makes high school go so much smoother.
yeah, it makes, when you say it, it makes me think of you're actually reaping the reward. So everything you did from K through eight, now you get to see it in full action. The
Yes.
character that you developed, everything that you worked
Mhm.
on so hard to instill in them, whether it's from a principal or from a printable, like for me,
Yeah.
from either standpoint, now you get to see it explode as they make those connections. So that's kind of what
Yes.
I'm hearing.
Yes.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
absolutely true.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And I know you say you're a little bit more relaxed because you have boys and you realize in retrospect that it doesn't take all that. And you even have a title in terms of, you know, all the things that we do to make it harder than it actually should be.
Mhm.
Were you
Mhm.
always like this? Is this wisdom as a result of doing the other way that didn't work? Is this personality like, I need some of this relaxed mindset in my life?
I think I had to be relaxed or I would have gone crazy because just
Mm,
the ages of my kids and all that, just so close in age, like I had to be. So yeah, like sometimes I wasn't as relaxed as I would have liked. Like I said, I used too many printables at the early years because I thought I had to. I was doing a little bit too much school at home at the very beginning,
yeah.
but I think I just had to be relaxed or I would have gone crazy. And I think the more
Mm.
kids I had, I don't know if you feel this way, like the more kids you have, you're kind of like a more relaxed mom because you just have to be. I think that's part of it too.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting perspective in terms of you intentionally chose to be this way to not only
Mhm.
maintain your sanity and, the
Mhm.
peace of the house, but also you realized it's not that serious. Like
Yeah.
education is important, but
Yeah.
education is not just information. It's not just
Yes.
facts. It's not just worksheets and principles. So
Yes.
I needed to hear
Exactly.
that.
Oh, good. Awesome.
What else would you like to share? Do you have any final thoughts or anything that you wish us moms who are new and still in the trenches, deep, 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 anything you want to share?
I would say, you know how everyone thinks like, okay, you think because if you're having trouble homeschooling, it's because it must be, a problem with you, or you think only patient people, oh, if I'm having trouble, it's because I'm not a homeschool mom. I'm not patient enough. I'm not good enough, right? We always think that, oh, well, this is for the people who have it all together. That those are the good homeschool moms. Well, it's hard to homeschool because you're with your kids all the time. We love it, but it's also that's the biggest challenge, right? So we see all their faults, whereas if they were at school, we wouldn't see half of them. They
Yeah.
see all our faults. They see us lose our temper. They see us, not do things well, not respond well. And I think that is it's the worst thing about homeschooling and the best because it allows us to be authentic and to have relationships where we give grace and we say sorry and like growing up like that together through all those years together, it's the best thing, because that's how your kids are going to learn how to have relationships when they're adults. That's what you have to do, right? So the worst thing and the best thing, having the kids with us all day, embrace it. And no, you don't have to be the most patient mom, but we do have to be grace filled, right? We have to say we
Mm,
did wrong, I'm sorry. And the kids learn to do that too, because they see us also repenting when we need to. So it's interesting, isn't it? It shows us our weaknesses, but then we're able to, turn to the Lord for strength. So I think that's
yeah.
that's the beauty of it.
And that's a beautiful response because you talked about the character development that we get as a result of engaging in
Hmm.
home-centered education. You
Hmm.
talked about the importance of not necessarily doing away with the worksheet, but showing that we're modeling, right?
Hmm.
It's not
Hmm.
paper and pen. It's not grade A or grade B, even though you're evaluated, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really about what are we modeling? Are we
Hmm.
teaching them that we apologize when we make a mistake? Are we teaching them that, you know, it's okay to just have an attitude all day? What are we teaching them?
Mm.
Because teaching is not just from the book to someone's head, it's what we're modeling in the character we're showing. So thank you so much for that reflection.
Yes. You're welcome. That's so true. It's discipleship, right? All of education is discipleship.
It's
Yeah.
discipleship. Yeah. And
Hmm.
that's a mindset shift we need to make. It's not when you see a kid, it's not there goes somebody I have to teach. It's someone you're
Hmm.
doing life with, someone that you're building a relationship with and teaching them life skills, not
Hmm.
just two plus two, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, Abby, you are such a breath of fresh air. It's so peaceful. Like you've totally been like the thermostat in this conversation, and you have me relaxed. I'm like, oh,
Oh.
I'm doing all right.
Oh.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing, even so transparently, like what's going on in your life, what's going on with your children, and the end result and the beauty of all the work that you did. So I appreciate you so much, and I thank you for your time today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. It's so fun chatting with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Abby.